Hello and welcome back to our series. We're building this people and culture management system. We're currently focusing on our compensation controls and filters section right here. This series is brought to you by Prairie HR Solutions. My name is Jake Finger, founder and principal consultant here at Prairie HR Solutions. And in this video, I want to pick up where we left off. What we did last time was we built onto the functionality of being able to lock our division and then have the job title populate only the job titles within the finance section. So we only have 3 here. And then what we did was we carried that same kind of concept onto all of these. So our functional families only have the functional families that belong to the finance. Same with our job levels here, the states, and our employee numbers. So what I would like to do now, well, a couple of things. I would like to take the logic that we did with this to populate these and condense that down just like we did up here. And you'll see what I'm talking about here in a second. If you have no idea what I'm talking about or how it is that we got to this thing, please go back and watch my previous videos because we built this from scratch. And in order to understand what we're doing, you should know where we've been. And once we clean this up, what I would like to do is then start working on our button here, locking the job title in and continuing this on down. Now, if you've watched the previous videos, you can see that this is going to get pretty heavy on our if statements. And we don't necessarily need to drill it down all the way. It's really based on what it is you're trying to do and the preference of your organization. But I do want to show you how that's going to happen. And I'm thinking of perhaps doing the job title, the functional family, and then perhaps, well, let's just do the job title and then see where we're at. But what I want to do is have this then do something further. So that's the intent with this. And then that way, if you need to carry it on further or add other drop-down boxes, you can. But since this is designed to really just give you code in order for you to adapt it and be incredibly generalized, we'll probably just leave it here for instruction purposes. So let's actually go back to our code here. Let me make sure everything's reset. Yep, okay. So let's go back over here to our code and let's do something with this. One thing that I added that we didn't have was this sort piece. What was ending up happening was as this would populate, it would come in all kinds of different orders and ways, and it got kind of confusing to look at. So I just added this sort here. But what we're essentially going to do, I should say, is this function that populates all of this is actually going to look like this. So what we essentially need to do is create first a drop-down map. So let's copy this and then come down here to our populate div filter, and we will simply just create a drop-down filter mapping, we'll call it that. And so we have our comp division. Now our comp division is not going to be really mattered here because this is our filter, so we don't need that. What we need is our comp jobs. Now our comp jobs is actually going to be, let's give ourselves a space here. It's actually going to be 0. So we change this to 0. And what we're doing up here is we're just creating a map to where this can follow it and pull as it needs to. And the filter dropdown we don't need, because I don't think we have anything for this filter dropdown. Let's go see what that filter dropdown is just to make sure. Filter drop down is 2. So let's go see our filter drop down. So our filter drop down is actually I want to say our demographics. Yes, it is our demographics. Okay, so that makes sense. So we are going to need our filter drop down. We'll leave it in here for now. So this is actually going to be, let's see, go down here. So this should be, let's think about this. If we filter our comp div, we're not doing anything with our filter dropdown. We're not even touching it. So in actuality, this can just go away. And if we need to, we can just add it back. But I'm not even thinking about it operationally, I'm not seeing us use that once we start filtering our data. Because that's not going to change. Everybody's still going to have an age, gender, all that stuff. So our comp functional is going to be 1, and then our job level is going to be 2. 1, 2, and then this will be 3, and then this will be 4. And then let's just go through and make sure that that's 3 and that's 4. Okay, good. So now what we can do is then come up here and look at what we did. And what we did was then we did this loop. And we went through our entries for this drop-down mapping piece. And then for each one of them, we took the drop-down ID and the data index, ID index. And then we created another variable of that ID, and then that's where we populated it. So instead of doing like, let's go down here and find it here. Instead of doing like comp job level, comp that, essentially what we did is we just put that through that loop. So let's grab this loop here real quick. And we'll just copy it. Now we're going to have to tailor this a little bit because we're not using the same stuff. So we're still going to do the object. You know, we're still constructing an object. We're still using the entries. Now we're not using this drop-down filter map or this drop-down mapping. We're using the drop-down filter mapping. And then for each of them, looks like we're missing a, well, that's okay. We'll pick that up later. We're going to grab the drop-down ID, the data index, drop-down ID, and then, okay. Let's call this filtered. Okay. So then what we need to do is come up here and grab, just make sure that we grab everything that we need here. So that should be that, and this should be our for each. Yes. Okay, so let's grab this. And then we can scroll back down here and add this here. And then a lot of this stuff here is going to go away. So it's not going to be the drop down this, it's going to be the drop down filtered. And as you'll see that when we created this, we were passing this data. Now this data is what was being passed to our function. So it's not going to be the data that we're grabbing because it has no idea what this data is. It's going to be this filtered data. It's going to be that. Okay, that's kind of odd. Okay, let's come back up here. I kind of squished some buttons that I wasn't meaning to when I was holding control. There we go. Okay, and then it's going to go through this, for every filter index, what it's going to do is it's going to run this for each. It's going to do the category, the option. It's going to create the option. It's going to do that. It's going to do that. And then this drop down is actually not going to be a drop down. It's going to be this variable. Okay, so now what we can do is let's go ahead and start hacking some of this. So we don't need any of this anymore because we've already mapped it up there. We are going to need to capture this value. Okay, so we're going to leave this here, but let's get rid of all this because we'll have to figure out where to put this stuff because we're going to need to keep this value, and this may need to just be an if statement. Okay, so we don't need this, don't need this, don't need that, and we don't need that. So now what we're going to want to do is before we run this for each, we are going to want to reset all of this stuff. So let's grab this, and then we will come up here after we create our map. We'll reset everything. And that should take care of this. And then what we're going to need to do is figure out this job value. So this job value is essentially grabbing the value of the box for our job title, and then after it populates the stuff, it's setting the value of that box so we don't lose it, so it doesn't go back to that default of all levels. So what we're going to have to do is grab this before we reset it, and then after it's reset, then we'll do the comp jobs. So now we have to make sure that this comp jobs is actually declared because we got to have a place to go. So let's figure out if this is, okay, so this is not within a global variable, but it will be. We can do that after we get this thing going. So we are going to need to declare that variable because right now we just declared the map. So declare the variable there. Okay, so now let's save this and then go back and see how it works. Okay, so let's refresh it. Got the little spinner thing, so there's no syntax errors. Okay, let's make sure that we have stuff. So let's do human resources because there's only 2 of them in there. Okay, it's populated. Let's make sure that we have the full list there. Yep, let's lock this and then check it. Okay, nothing's populating. Let's check our F12 here. Reference area data is not defined. Okay, so we missed a data thing here. So let's see. So I see it right here. So what's happening is if it's checking the drop-down filter and the data at the data index. Well, data isn't a thing in this one anyway. So it should be that. So now let's save it and go back. And that should take care of that issue we have here. So let's pick human resources again. We'll lock it. Should have 78 of them. Okay, and then, okay, perfect. So now we have HR generalist. And we can select our HR director. That should change this. Does. And then we should be able to check, like say the wonderful state of Wisconsin. It doesn't look like there's anybody there. Oh, there's a reason why none of this is working here. And as you can see, when we select something, it goes back and nothing happens. And the reason nothing happens here is, let's uncheck this box and I'll show you exactly what happens. Then we can just select Wisconsin and you'll see something happens. Well, the reason nothing's happening when we have this checkbox is because essentially we don't have the logic built in here. We don't have the logic built in here for all divisions, but we can. So we're going to build this logic out though, but let's go in and unlock this again. We'll get more. Okay, we have our stuff here. Good. So now let's think about what we need to have happen. So here we have facilities. We lock it. So now this is a whole nother function. So it is now registering that this is activated, and then it's running all these if statements. So if we were to select, like say Wisconsin now, nothing happens because we don't have this field or this field or this field as an option. It doesn't know what to do. This is all the else. And all the else, when we come over here, we come down here to our get comp filter, it's checking to see which one of that, okay, is true. And then it's checking to see comp filter is comp jobs, which is the job title drop-down box. If it isn't, then it just does nothing and goes down here. Well, what happens when it goes down here is it resets everything. We don't have an option for it to do something if we don't have, if it's like the comp state or the comp whatever or that or this. So that's actually what we're going to build. So let's create some actual pieces here. What we'll do is let's just map out the if statement for now. I think this will be a good approach. So if it's the comp filter, it does that. Else, if comp filter is equal to this, now remember this comp filter is the target ID. It's whatever triggered this. So let's say comp functional families, I believe is what we called it. Come back over here, controls and filter, functional family. Then we wanted to do something else and then comp levels. So there's going to be a little bit of this going on, a little bit of typing, and we'll just say this is an alert for now. Comp functional family. Let's make this big just in case we grab it and we don't want to screw anything up. There we go. And then what we can do now is take this and then build it out for the rest of them. So this is going to be job level. Now it's not going to do anything other than just give us this thing, give us this alert, and then this should be state, and then it'll show state, but at least we should be able to get it to trigger. And then this will be employee num. Let's just go make sure that's what it is. Employee num. Yep. Now, as you can see, each one of these is firing that same function. And then this here should be employee num. So let's see if we can get this to fire and produce the appropriate alerts. So let's come back here and refresh. Now remember, this is only when we have, so if we select this, it's not going to do anything because that checkbox isn't done. It's just going to run the code as normal. Select this back to all. Yep, there we go. So now if we were to select, say, human resources and then lock it, it should do nothing but just run the human resources and that code that we want, which should change this. And then we do human resources generalist, changes to generalist, changes to director, voila, do all jobs, populates it back. So now if we select any one of these, we should be getting an alert. Employee number, good. Still going back there and checking it. So we'll have to address that. So it's resetting it for something. Okay, we'll look at that. And then this should be comp state, Iowa. And then it's resetting. This one will probably reset as well. Executive, licensed trade. Now what we could do is just get the value of this and repopulate it. But I'd like to know where this is actually occurring. So let's come back down here. So then what is actually happening here is this is, this is if it's true. So if it's not true, then it handles this reset. But we're still resetting that value, and we're resetting that value. We'll have to find where that value is being reset at. So let's actually do a control F here, and I want to find where we're resetting our values. Okay, so these reset all of our values, and then that resets values. So this is our handle drop-down reset. And it's only being called here. So let's actually check something here. You can just pop an alert in here. I am starting the handle drop down reset. Now we could use the console log, but I just want to throw the alerts in there just to see the order, because if this is being called, we'll have to figure that out. So let's refresh this again. And then once it's refreshed, we'll go through our thing and see if that is actually being triggered. So let's pick up facilities. Okay. So the second the division is being triggered, because that's right, it's not part of the comp, so that's handling the else. Okay. So then it's resetting everything, which is okay. Now if we lock it, nothing. And then let's select Florida, comp state. And then it's popping this all locations. Okay, so it's not there. It's actually not there. So let's make sure this one doesn't do it. Nope. This one doesn't do it. And this one doesn't do it. Okay, interesting. So that is not actually being fired there. So this is only being fired once that event filter kicks off. So we're resetting something. I'm thinking we are resetting something when we populate the data. So we'll start filtering this index and process our data. Okay, I'll go through this and figure out exactly where we're resetting this. Might be every time that we run this pop comp filter. while we're here, let's just do that. Let's just do it just to see. Because if not, this may take yet another if statement. So I am resetting the jobs. Let's see if this is where it's getting, let's see if this is where it's actually getting picked up. Because if that's the case, we may need to write some logic here. Let's wait for it to save. There it is. Come back over here, refresh. Let's do facilities. Okay, that's the handle drop down reset. We hit the lock button. Now I am resetting the drop downs, which is fine because we only want to do that when it hits this so it can rebuild it. That's fine. And now I shouldn't get that alert again. Executive, comp job level. I am resetting the drop downs. Okay, so that's our loop. So we can address that. We'll go through and look at that again. But what I would like to do is write the if statement first for this little thingy right here. So let's come back over here to our code. And what we're going to look at is we are running this quite a bit. So every time that we click this comp filter, we are essentially sending it down to something. We'll find it. But anyway, okay, so let's go back over here. We'll have to go through the code and actually look at what that is. So our boxes, checkbox switch things, is this right here. Now you'll see that this is to check and send out to our filtering piece, but then we have this comp div lock thing. So our comp div lock is right here. So let's go ahead and pass an event through here like we've been doing. So this is going to take an event, and then let's copy this and then also give this to our comp switch. Now remember, this has got to be on our input. Okay, so now that'll run it. So now we just need to figure out which one does what. So when we come back over here to our comp div lock, let's first create a variable. So we have a comp div switch and a comp job switch. Now let's create a variable for that event. And, you know, we clean this up a little bit down later, so we'll do that after we do the basics. We'll then clean it up just like do the drop downs. So let's call this variable check switch. Let's just call it check switch. And this is going to be equal to, now we're passing an event, right? So what we're going to need to do is when we come down here, we are grabbing our, let me find it here. You can see that we took our event, got the target ID, and then what we did was we passed that to a bunch. And this is what we'll end up doing eventually. But this is the piece that we need. We need to take this event, find the target that caused that event, and then get the ID of it. So this is essentially just what we're going to grab. Like that. And now what we can do is write ourselves an if statement. So if the check switch, spell it right, if the check switch is strictly equal to, now we need the ID of this, and it is going to be, let's do the job switch first. Oh no, we'll do this. Actually, we'll do the division first. What we're going to do is want to do all of this. So if it's not, then what we can do is simply, let's just give it a default, and that is going to be an alert, and that alert is going to be the job check switch was clicked. There we go. Okay, so let's save this and see what we got. Make sure all of our things line here. So if this was, if it was the division check switch that actually got checked, then it's going to run this as normal. If it wasn't, it's just going to give this job check switch thing was clicked alert, and then it's just going to end the function and not do anything. Okay, so let's refresh this. So now if we come up here and click this, the job check button or the job check switch was clicked. Okay, good. And then we unclick it, was clicked. Okay, so it's just moving, it's just checking to see if something was happened, which is fine. And then if we do this, we shouldn't get an alert, and things should happen. Things should just happen as normal. Okay, good. And they do. Good, 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 good. So now what we can do is come back over here and figure out, now that we got the switch, doing something, what we want to do is take the rest of these drop-down boxes and have them do something. So if we were to select full stack development on the functional family, what we want is to initially filter just the division by all those. And then once we get those done, all 4 of these done, then we can incorporate another level into this button here. So let me see where we're at with time. Okay, so we're at 30 minutes now. I'm going to go ahead and end this video now that we've gotten this button working. And then the next video, we will focus specifically on filtering our functional family by the division and the rest of those 4 boxes. And then we'll be able to incorporate our job title, because then it should just be a copy and paste piece then. So I hope this was an informative episode and video. And until next time, please take care.